everyone, and welcome to PreSonus Live. I have the distinct privilege to be broadcasting live from the brand new PreSonus building. And we were thinking about ideas of what we would broadcast today, what we would talk about. And I was talking to Mike and Andy, our video guys, and I was talking to Ryan as well. And Ryan, being the genius that he is, came up with the tagline, "Why AI?" We've gotten a lot of questions of, why, or what is the difference between the classic StudioLive and the StudioLive AI? So I'm going to break it down in a hardware thing, and I'm going to break it down in software, and just kind of go feature by feature and show you what it does, why it's cool, how to use it, kind of thing. So let's get started with hardware. So first thing we want to talk about is Fat Channel AB. What is that? Well, let me go ahead and zero this out. On your StudioLive AI, your 16, your 24, or your 32, you have a fat channel, just like you would on your classic mixer. But on the AI, you've got this cool little button called the Alt-AB. And what that allows you to do is, say for instance, on channel 16, I want to recall, a keys or a trumpet. So I'll recall that. So let's say it's a trumpet player, it's kind of a utility player or something. They're gonna play trumpet, they play trombone, they play the saxophone, they're using the same microphone. And you know that songs 1 through 6 is gonna be trumpet, and then song 7 is gonna be a trombone. And you want different EQ. Well, what you can do is you can hit your Alt-AB button, and then you can recall a different preset, like the saxophone. And then he goes back to the trumpet, boom, you hit Alt-AB again, and it goes back to the trumpet preset. Another good analogy is a Rick Knockby chop. Say on channel 20, you want to load, say a guitar or something. I'll find a cool guitar tone, rock. Okay, so we'll recall the guitar. And that's, say, your tele sound. Maybe you make some tweaks, in your EQ as well. So you're using a Telecaster, and then, on song 5, you change to a Les Paul. It's a very different tone. Or let's say you use another Telecaster that has some completely different pickups and you just want to change the tone. You don't want to have to tweak it back and forth every time the artist changes their instruments. So a cool thing to do is hit Alt-AB again and then find another preset, or recall a preset and then tweak it from there, or make your own changes. And then you can just, boom, switch back and forth between the different settings. So that's a cool thing you can have, and that's on every fat channel. So where your buttons are flashing, where the fat channel is available, you have that, which is great because you can just go back and forth and make quick changes on a channel level. You can also make scene changes, which is on the entire console, but that just makes it a little quicker on a per channel basis. Processing. There's a new computer inside this thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but you've got more processing. You've got more horsepower to do more things. It affords you more cool bells and whistles like Fat Channel AB. Another cool thing is you had X amount of EQs on the classic mixers. On this bad boy, you've got like a ton. You've got it on the main output like you would on the classic, but you got every aux. So that's 16 graphic EQs. And when you have those graphic EQs or you're using them, you're not taking up effect slots that you would in a traditional digital mixer. You're not, sacrificing some other effect like a limiter or a compressor so you can have a graphic EQ in that slot. You have 16 graphic EQs, and then in addition to that, you have limiters on every fat channel. So limiters on every channel. So you're not sacrificing one thing to have the other thing. So, and what's cool is you can use all that stuff at the same time. You're not going to run out of horsepower if you got everything turned on all at once. And it's not, limited by however many effect slots that you have. So that's a pretty interesting thing. Outputs. The board doesn't look much bigger than a 24, and none of the boards look, the 16 and the 24 are exactly the same frame size. So that's another thing, a common misconception. What's different? They're exactly the same size. They look almost exactly the same color-wise. The 32 has more outputs than any other 32 digital mixer out there. So that's kind of a cool thing to have. More is better. More outputs is and ways to get things up to stage, or ways to get things to a cry room, or a foyer, or to a broadcast truck, or wherever it needs to go. It's good to have separate outputs that are controlled separately from your mix or from your auxes. So that's a pretty important thing to talk about. So still on the hardware, double the time-based effects. So if you look up here, you've got effects A, B, C, and D. So that's double from the original or classic StudioLive mixers. The AI mixers have 4 effects processors, which is great. So you got 2 reverb slots, 2 delay slots, and anything can be sent to these effects processors, and they are normal back to the mains, but you can also route them back to the sub, so you can have fader control over the wet dry signal of whatever you're sending there. For instance, I can actually just kind of show you how that works real quick. Let me get some music going. I'm going to load this scene. That's something we're going to talk about in the software portion of this demonstration. And I'll play some stuff back, and I'm just going to swap over to the FireWire setting here, and let's say I've got some stuff playing back, so let's say guitar. So there's some guitar. Let me put my phones on so I can hear what it is that I'm doing. Okay, so that's the guitar. So what I want to do is I'm going to mix to it, and it looks like I've already got some reverb mixed to it. So let's unmute it. All right, so there's your wet dry there, and that's on this actual encoder. A cool thing you can do is when you hit select, you're looking at the fat channel of that effects processor. So not only do you have a reverb, delay, each one of those effects processors has a fat channel on it. So you can do cool stuff like roll off, low end energy that you don't want in your reverb or whatever. But you can also route it out of the main and into a sub fader, which will give you control over the wet, like I was saying, the wet dry mix. You can control it over a fader. So that's a cool thing too. And you can do that on the classics. The difference would be that you have 4 processors on this and 2 on the original guys. Now, something that's really great that I've been wanting for quite a while are mute groups. Mute groups and quick scene or mix scene recalls, okay? What is that? What does it do? Well, mute groups is exactly what it sounds like. You can create groups of mutes however you see fit. When I'm setting up a mixer, and if you look, I'll go ahead and zero out this mixer. First thing I want to do is I want to mute my auxes. And then I'll just press and hold this bad boy right here, and then I can toggle that off and on. So I now have control over muting my effects with just this one tiny button instead of having to go 1, 2, 3, 4 real quick. So for instance, why would I want to do that? I'm singing a song, or the artist is singing a song, and in between the songs he's announcing the next song or the importance of what the next song was written about, and you don't want reverb and delay when he's trying to talk to the crowd. So I'll turn all of my effects off, dry everything up. It's less, stuff to worry about, and then he's more intelligible when he's talking instead of singing. So that's the first thing I want to do. The next thing I'll do is I'll mute all of my auxes. So when I'm start unplugging stuff, or if I'm starting to tear down or whatever, I might do an all-on, which is totally fine, and I'll show you how that works in a second. But I'll just mute my auxes as well. So I have a mute group of auxes, and then I have a mute group of effects, just like so. There is an all-on button, which is great. So that's really the tear down button. If I need to go start unplugging stuff, I just turn all on, or I can turn everything off. And what's cool is when you hit a mute group, you can just use the same button to toggle the mutes on and off. Mix scenes or the quick scene recall works exactly the same way. You find a scene you want, press and hold it, and then you can toggle between the scenes right on the surface, which is a cool feature to have, because you may, in a theater, they make a lot of changes, and also in some regular performances that travel around need to make quick scene recalls as well. So that's a really handy way to do it. Instead of having to do it right in the master control, you can just have everything at the touch of a single button. Another cool scenario for mute groups is something Andy came up with was, let's say you're at a house of worship and everybody on stage is a singer, guitar player, whatever. So let's say we're going to mute all of these channels, right? And let's say that pastor's mic is on, let's say channel 28. So we'll put that on mute group 3. So normally everybody's playing, and then the worship time is over, and then the pastor's going to go ahead and start giving the sermon. I hit 3, boom, his channel is still open, and he can kind of do his thing. There's a ton of different scenarios of why you use mute groups, but they make the workflow much more easy. So it's really something cool to start using and kind of, you know, integrating in the way that you're mixing. Now, like I was saying before, the computer that's inside this guy, same computer that's inside of our speakers, the new StudioLive AI PA. And that guy has given us the new wireless control, the active integration to the software in the computer, the active integration to the wireless devices. So that's what's making everything possible with the new fat channels and all the cool stuff that we've just shown you, and the more effects processors and all that good stuff. That's kind of the heart, or the new heart, of the StudioLive. And not that the fat channel's taking the back burner. So let's talk a little bit about, that's the hardware. That's just on the surface itself. Let's talk about the software. So I can record 48 channels, playback 34 channels. That's using this bad boy right here, the 32 channel. So that changes as you move down to 24 and 16. But you have tons of channels to record over the FireWire stream. Through the card. So that's FireWire 800 now on the new guys. It's 400 on the classic. So that's another difference hardware-wise that I failed to mention, was that you have a faster transfer protocol. When you're actually recording, that connection is now FireWire 800, and because it's a card, there's an actual card slot on the back of the mixer. We're going to be able to change that to different transfer protocols like Thunderbolt and Ethernet. Excuse me. So that's going to be a kind of cool thing, and that's, you know, something that we're in development with right now. Virtual sound check. Now, anyone who has used the classic mixer knows a virtual sound check is something that we would talk about before, but now with active integration, it's integrated in a way that it's seamless, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we're going to close this window and not save anything here. And I'm going to, we've talked about Capture, and there are videos on Capture and how Capture works, and this naming scheme, or the hierarchy of this naming scheme. What I want to do is I'm going to create a new session. Now, you all know that we can just hit record now and just start recording however many channels were connected over FireWire, but that's not kind of what I want to do. I'm going to create a new session, and then it's created my tracks and channels and all that good stuff, right? Great. So I've got 32 tracks ready to rock and roll. All I have to do is hit record. But what I want to do is a virtual sound check. So I'm going to go over to this icon here with the microphone and the check symbol, and it's going to ask me, hey, what session do you want to use to do a virtual sound check? And I'm going to say, I want to use this guy because this guy has mixed scene information affiliated with it. What does that mean? Well, with active integration and Capture 2, and having these guys over the active integration network talking to each other, shaking hands and sending emails, and you know what I mean, making friends rather, I can now save scene information alongside of the recording session that I'm recording into Capture. So that means fader positions, mutes, fat channel settings, all that cool stuff, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how that plays into releasing the song or getting it into Studio One. But that information is saved in this little icon right here. I hope that you can see that icon. Lets me know, hey, there's information affiliated with this. So when I click on that and click OK, it's going to load those tracks into Capture for me. And then check this out. It's got this dialog says, loading the mixer scene will overwrite current settings of the device. Do you want to load it? And I'll say, heck yeah. And then when I click this, you'll notice that on the hardware is going to change to whatever the scene setting is affiliated with Capture. So I'm going to click it, and it's going to load the scene, and whatever that scene was, it's going to rock and roll. It's going to change my inputs to the digital input because it knows we're in virtual sound check mode. And all I have to do is click playback. And then I'll be playing, inputs here, playback, and then boom, you see stuff happening here. I'll unmute my channels and start to do my virtual sound check. So that was relatively painless. Let's kind of recap it real quick. I click on virtual sound check, find the session that I want to use to sound check my room, and then click OK. And that loads the scene that's affiliated with those tracks, and it turns all my input buttons to digital so I can actually receive the information over FireWire. So that's trimmed down a couple of steps for the whole virtual sound check project or process rather, and it's a real virtual sound check that not a lot of other solutions offer. So that's just virtual sound check. Why is it cool? What do you use it for? Well, most of you know you will use it for a virtual sound check, which means that you can sound check your system and get some settings done on your hardware without anybody being on stage. But it's also a cool tool to use to teach someone how a mixer works, especially in the volunteer area. Clubs use a lot of volunteers, or people that think, they say they know what they're doing, don't quite. Well, that's okay. They can actually wing it because they have the virtual sound check tool to get themselves up to speed on how this thing works. But to show people how, to use the mixer, using virtual sound check, and even using your universal control, your VSL, you can use this graphic representation and virtual sound check to walk through this entire system and show somebody how to use it in a matter of, get the concept in a matter of minutes. What's a fat channel? How does the fader work? What input are we looking at? Here's the, trim. It's really simple step by step, and you don't need musicians to do it. So that's always good. Next thing, real-time network changes. This is a really cool thing for me. If you noticed, over here in Capture, you'll see that it's labeled drums, D1, DI1, DI2, piano, guitar, yada, 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 yada. Well, you can also look on the iPad, and it says the same thing. So if you remember, when I did the virtual sound check, I recalled a session that had scene information, and it recalled the scene. But not only did it recall that scene information on the hardware, it recalled the names in Capture, it recalled the names on the hardware, it recalled the names and the settings on iPad, and it will do the same thing on QMix as well. So if I've got AUXMix 1 or 14 or whatever, and that's labeled whatever it may be labeled, that's going to show up on here, and then all of the channel names will show up here as well. So let's close this out, and I'll show you what I'm talking about real quick. And just for giggles, we will recall a 0 scene here. And we're going to recall this scene. It's going to say, hey, do you want to load this mix scene? I'll say, yes, I want to load this mix scene. It loads my mix scene. It's going to load the names. You see that we have names here in Capture: drums, bass, DI, piano. And then again, you can see drums, bass, DI, piano on the iPad itself. And then what's cool is same thing on the hardware as well. So if I'm going through selecting drums, bass, piano, yada, yada, yada. Everything changes on the network in real time. So the scene changes here, it changes in the iPad because that's following along with this. Changes in Virtual Studio Live, changes in Capture, because Capture is kind of like the ringleader. When I recall a session and it has that information, it says, okay, we're changing that. It's going to change it on the hardware, changes it on the software, wireless application devices. So that's a pretty interesting thing. So if I want to change it here, if I want to, let's say, change it here. Boom, it's going to change it in real time on my iPad. You'll notice I changed it to stand-up bass, and it abbreviated it to stand bass. And then it has changed it here on my hardware. It says stand-up bass here. So that's what active integration at its core is all about. We were able to record and play back and do virtual sound check on classic mixers, but now everything that's on the network, including your wireless devices, which would be SL Remote for the mixer and QMix and Capture and Virtual Studio Live, they are all talking to each other all at the same time. So if I do something on one piece in this network, they're all updating in real time. So that's important. Back to Capture, there's a couple of things that I failed to mention about that bad boy. There is a 60-second cache. And I'm a pretty typical sound guy. I'm a little forgetful. There's a lot of stuff going on in a live situation. For instance, recently at NAMM, we were doing a lot of live performances, and I was recording all of them. Well, 90% of the time, I would hit record, and there was no problem. And the other 10% of the time, I would miss it, which is not a big deal because I would immediately forget it. But in the heat of the moment, you're trying to combat feedback, or you're trying to get a headphone mix done because they may not be using QMix or whatever the case may be. And you forgot to hit record. Well, what's cool is as long as the application is open and connected to the mixer, it's caching 60 seconds of whatever's coming into those, up to 60 seconds of whatever's coming to the inputs of the mixer, which is really cool to have. So if I'm doing my thing, I have 60 seconds to not be a dummy. Remember to reach over there and hit record. Now, once I've gone into record, and we'll just do that. We'll close this. Don't want to save changes. So we'll just go into record now. And once I've gone into record and I'm recording, I can't accidentally hit the space bar, which could be something I do. It's actually something I've done a million times. Not a million, but a lot. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to stop that recording until I know for sure we've got everything and we're done recording. There's this cool new little lock feature here that allows me to unlock and then I can stop recording. So it's small little features like that that are cool. In addition, there's a big meters feature. So if I'm playing something back, let's actually play something back. We will play this guy back right here. We'll even load the scene, and I will zoom out a little bit here. Oh, that's the wrong session, excuse me. No, and then we'll go here, there we go. And I'll load that scene. And then I'll zoom out a little bit on that guy. And then we'll play back some hot jams. Let's make sure we turn the digital buttons on because we're not doing a virtual sound check. Remember, in a virtual sound check, it will automatically turn your digital inputs on. But since I'm just trying to play it back. But there's this cool little button right here that allows me to turn them all on or all off. So I click this button right here, this little digital button, and you'll notice here on the hardware that they're all lit up. When I turn it off, they all turn off. So it's just like a quick way. And you can also swipe it if you're an old school dude. If you want to have the feel of the button under your finger, you can totally do that. It's not a big deal. So let's turn it on and let's play back music. And we don't really need to hear it, but I'll just show you, boom. Big meters, and obviously Justin likes things in the red. I don't think it sounds good until it's in the red, so I mean, we may disagree on that, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But the big meter thing is cool, so you can also use that to set your incoming levels or your incoming signal. And it's just nicer to have bigger meters than what's available. So that's a cool new feature as well. So we talked a little bit about scene saves. So let me turn this off because it's totally distracting me. No. I quit it and I didn't want to do that. So I'll open Capture back up. We were talking about these sessions in Capture. When I record to them, they're also recording scene information. So why is that cool? Well, when I open them in Capture, or excuse me, in Studio One, they have all of the scene information in the session, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead real quick and open Studio One, but what's going to happen is, let's get out of that. What's going to happen is what the fat channel settings, the pan information, the mutes, the fader levels, all of this great stuff is saved inside of your capture scene, which is great because you want that, right? And when you open it up in Studio One, let me see if I got this open here. This is not the session. When you open inside of Studio One, it opens up all of your fat channel settings and all of your channel settings and then the mutes and solos. So I'm going to find the proper project in Capture, and then I'm going to open that in here. There we go. Friday afternoon. That will work, I believe. Boom. Okay. So it's got my mutes here, if you can see, and then you can see the fader position. I'll open up the mixer, and you can see the fader position. So this is the exact replica of what I was doing when I was mixing on the hardware itself. I'll open one of these up, and you can also see it has actually the fat channel plug-in on it. And these were the settings that I had set in the mixer itself. Now, why is this cool and why is it important? Well, one, it's a new plugin in Studio One. It's a fat channel, and that's cool in and of itself. Two, this is getting me closer to the mix, the final mix. I've done all my mixing and stuff, and we did this show, and it was great, and we recorded it. But now, what do I do? What's the end result? Well, I want to take that, and I want to get it to the fans. Well, how do I do that? I've got to mix, master, I'll do all this stuff, which is still the case. But having all of these settings inside of Studio One done gets you closer to the mix. So you still do some tweaks. You may even master it as well. But this is getting us closer, and it's just cool to have those settings inside of there to get you closer to that final result so you can get the product to the customer. There's some kind of heavy hitter points here that I need to talk to you about before we kind of cut out for the day. Built-in support for Nimbit and SoundCloud, so you can share that music. So once you've actually recorded a capture, opened that session in Studio One, finalized your mix with all of this cool scene information that you got off of the mixer, and you've even mastered it, you can digitally release right in Studio One's project page to Nimbit or SoundCloud and sell and share your music with people all over the web. That's integrated into the software, and that's very important. It's a very cool thing to do. I mean, no one else really has that. Some people are implementing SoundCloud, but no one has the Nimbit support. So Nimbit is really great. We have tons of videos on that. I won't go into depth on it, but definitely check that out if you're interested in selling your music and keeping more money and really getting it out there. The other thing, the other integration that you won't find in other digital mixers or mixer software is the smart software. So let me open up Universal Control, and you'll see my mixer, and I'll open my mixer, and then it's going to show you a graphic representation of the hardware. Well, integrated directly into that software is Smart. So if I click on Smart here and I say proceed, two things have happened. If you look at my iPad, you'll see, hey, the mixer is undergoing smart configuration, please wait, okay? The next thing that happened is on my hardware, it has gone into smart mode. Now there are three wizards that run in smart integration into Universal Control, and of those, there's room analysis, system delay, and output check. And the room analysis throws noise through the system, you hook up your microphone, and it walks you through how to do this. And it basically helps you tune the EQ, the parametric EQ across the output of your speakers, right? System delay is exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to take speaker A and speaker B and align them in time by delaying the output of speaker B, basically, or yeah, delaying the output of one or the other. I probably got it mixed up, but you know what I mean. We're delaying that output time to line the two speakers up so when it hits your ears, there's not like a slap back or, you know, several millisecond delay of the signal. And then output check. What did I plug into where? I know that everyone's used help before, and they've plugged in stuff. You said, hey, plug this into this, this into this, this into this, and they never did that. Not a big deal. You've got output check now. I thought this was plugged into output 14, and you hit output check and it's not. And then you just make a quick switch at the console or on the hardware. So that's a cool thing. That's completely integrated. There's another thing, you can go remote, which is pretty great, because that allows you to do everything that I just said using the iPad, which is great because, you know, using the iPad is cool to do monitor mixes on stage. Now it's cool to, you know, do your smart analysis anywhere you need to be while you're setting up microphones or while you're turning speakers or setting up other stuff. So it's cool to be remote. So hardware-wise, we talked about that. Software, we've talked about Universal Control, smart integration. Capture with the active integration, which allows us to take those scenes and open up the Studio One and get us further down the road on our mix with the fat channel settings and level and mutes. And also wireless control, and everybody being on the same network and being happy and talking to each other at the same time. That's really great and really important, because ultimately what all this stuff means is it makes your job easier. If you do something here, it's doing it everywhere else, and you're not worried about, oh, do I need to do it on this application, or do I need to reset it on this piece of hardware? You don't have to do it. You don't have to do that. You don't think about it. You just do your business and mix audio. So that's pretty much what we wanted to cover for today. I'm going to take some questions, which I've been getting throughout this broadcast. So let me pull them up. And we should do some giveaways. What do you guys think? We're going to give away Ryan's car? Excellent. All right, so let me go to messages, and then Ryan has sent some stuff. Where do I get the cool iPad stand? That's an amazing question. We actually manufacture this, and you can get it on our web store. So go to PreSonus.com and click on the, I think it's retail, or it's probably top right corner of PreSonus.com, and you'll see there's a web store. You go to there, and you can grab that bad boy there. I couldn't tell you how much it is, but it's not too much because it's too cool to not have it. Shouldn't the plural form of ox be oxen? And that is possible, but I just say auxes or auxes. So, I mean, we're all doing things a little differently. Even though we're getting audio from the stage into the mixer and out to the speakers, that's really our job. Aux or auxes or auxes? I don't know. I'm gonna get back with that guy on that one. Any changes to the smart stuff on the AI mixer? No, there's no changes. I don't believe. I may be mistaken, but as far as the wizards are concerned, they still all function the same way. You have wireless control of the smart wizards. We are definitely looking into some exciting things in the future, but as for now, the smart integration into universal control, which no one else has, I might add, functions exactly the same. So if you're familiar with the way we were doing it before, and all of the videos we've made on it before are still current and consistent with the way that it functions on the active integration mixers. Let's see. Any Dante options yet? We are definitely still working on that. The mixer shipping with the FireWire 800 and the direct connection network connection. And Ethernet and Thunderbolt are around the corner. I don't want to speculate on dates because no one tells me anything because they know I'd tell you. I would totally tell you. They shouldn't tell me because I would tell you as soon as I knew. So that's why they don't, because they know that I'll turn around and tell all my friends. On the 1642, can you currently print fat channel data when recording to Capture or Studio One? On the 16, okay, so that's not the active integration, and that is, the answer is no. Now, let me tell you this. You can't take the scene information, the actual data, and record it to Capture, but what you can do is you can print the sound of the fat channel on a per channel basis to the recording. That's completely different. So on the classic or on the active integration models, you can print your fat channel to the track, but on active integration, you can actually do that and take the settings, record those settings in Capture, and when you open it up in Studio One, the session opens up just like the mixer is on the hardware. So I hope that answers your question. We're probably going to reach out to you later to tell you who the winner of the brand new car, mildly new car, no, t-shirts. We'll have 3 winners, and since only 3 people were watching, you guys are all winners. No big deal. Really quickly, I just wanted to talk about one more thing, and then we're going to be out of here. I swear I won't take up any more of your time. Connecting everything. That's something we usually do very broad strokes on. We don't really tell you how to do it, but I'm going to tell you really quickly the best way that I do it. When you're setting this up and you're going to use active integration to its fullest, you're going to need a router. You probably can't see my router, but I have a router right here on the doghouse of my mixer, and I have that connected, hardwired to my StudioLive. And I'll tell you why I do that. The StudioLive has a dongle that it can wirelessly connect to the router. I choose to hardwire to it because because of interference, I think it has better performance. Sometimes this has been rock solid, but this side has been rock solid every time. And another cool thing about that is when I plug it in, I hit one button and it's set up. There's no configuration. I don't have to put in the password. With the wireless, I got to put in the password because it just sees it as a wireless device. When I jack it right in through the Ethernet, I hit recall or scan to recall. It sees it, sets up my IP address. I don't do anything else. So the same thing on, let me get out of this. Same thing on the iPad. When I'm setting that bad boy up, you go to settings, you find the router that you need, join it, put in the address. That's it. Then you launch your remote. You'll see the IP. This is the IP that automatically shot over to my mixer when I hardwired the Ethernet into the router. You click on that. It scans the network. Boom, it sees what you got, and you rock and roll. That's it. Then all you have to do is hook up a FireWire cable so you can record and play back, and you can use the smart integration. Now remember, you don't need a computer to do this. You need a computer to record and to shoot the room and output delay and system, or output delay and output check. So that's the only reason you need it. But ultimately, you're probably going to be recording anyway, so just plug it up. So that is active integration, and that's why it's cool. Definitely go and check it out at your local retailer. If you have a StudioLive already or a Classic, they are still awesome, and they still do a lot of the things that these mixers do, but the StudioLive AI takes it to a whole new level. Definitely get out there and check it out. Thanks everyone for watching. That's PreSonus Live.